Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Polar Q&A webinar for August. Can you believe it is already so far into the year? Hi, my name is Shane. I'm not joined by Jason today. He is unfortunately otherwise unavailable, so you are unfortunately stuck with me for the duration, but I do have a couple of the staff here from some of our business intelligence guys online, so we're hoping to go through today and have a little bit of a look at the sort of end-to-end component of Walrus. Before I get started, I just want to check, is everyone able to hear me? Just if anyone can just throw away a comment in the Q&A section there, just to make sure.
I can hear you, Shane.
Oh, perfect, Mick, thank you. Excellent, fantastic. Okay, great. Let us get underway. So as you know, we've shortened these down a little bit to make them a bit sharper and more succinct. So we're going to cover off as much as we can in the next half an hour. So as you all probably are aware, we very thankfully had the release of Walrus last month. So we've got it out there in the wild now. It seems to be ticking along nicely. And I just wanted to sort of transmit more broadly or communicate more broadly exactly how you get started with Walrus, just in case you're not yet using it in your practice, and also how you can use the interface itself. As always, this session is being recorded, so if you do miss something throughout the session or just want to review or get someone else to watch, we will be putting up this recording at the end of this session sometime this afternoon, where you can play it back and have a look at everything. So today we're going to be covering the end-to-end use of Walrus, so looking at the prerequisites for use, looking at the installation process, looking at the inbuilt options that Walrus has, using the interface, and then the just a couple of minor things I just need to sort of make sure people are aware of when it comes to using Walrus. There's some nuance there, especially as it is a fairly new release of the tool. Now, I'm assuming my screen is viewable at the moment. Mick, I'll get you to give me a heads up again, if that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Perfect. Excellent. I've learned my lesson. I've stopped sharing very high resolution video. It's been hard to read sometimes on screen for some people. Great, so let's get underway. So prerequisites for using Walrus. So Walrus, if just in case people aren't aware, is a point of care decision support tool. So this is about when a patient is in front of a clinician or an admin staff member, being able to see some quick insights about this patient's record, just some prompts and notifications to be able to help support, the care or administrative process of taking care of the patient in the practice. So it is connected to two things. So one is your Hummingbird extraction tool, which is the Polar tool that we use to actually extract the data in your practice, but also is connected to your clinical system. So if using best practice or medical director, I cannot believe it's not on the screen. It must be on the next slide. It is only for medical director and best practice at this stage. That may change in the future, who knows, but the technology behind some of the other clinical softwares is totally different. If you are on another software, I do apologize. This session is probably not for you because you will not be able to access this for now. I do have a quick question. Do we need to download Walrus every time that we use it? No, it needs to be downloaded once per PC per user. And there is a Windows user. So if you share Windows accounts, just the one download will be fine, but you can actually just download it the once, do the install, and it will stay on that machine. And it will also auto update, but I'll go into that in a moment. So you need to be able to have two things: the clinical information system, being BP or medical director, on the computer, and you also need to have that Hummingbird installation installed as well at your practice. But then that is true for all Polar processes. In order to use Walrus, the user must have a Polar account. So you can create a Polar account for them. There is probably one little nuance that I'll show in a moment as well, but that'll give them access to using the Walrus tool. There it is. The clinical system must be present on the PC that the Walrus is installed on. So I was looking for the acronym CIS, which I'm used to using, but obviously I wrote in clinical software. So not too onerous. The beauty of how Walrus works is that it doesn't require administrator permissions to be able to do the installation. It's pretty straightforward. I'm actually going to quickly demo it. It's pretty straightforward to be able to do that installation, and you can sort of get started using it, potentially within a minute of actually downloading the file. So let's have a look at what that actually looks like. So installation is as easy as 1, 2, 3. So firstly, it's downloading the Walrus installer. Now, I realize this screenshot might be a little bit small, so let's see if we can go across. So I have logged into Polar on this computer. So I'm just going to quickly make sure this doesn't time out. I have logged into Polar on this computer. When you first log in, you will be taken to this page. If you have a bookmark saved, you might go to wherever your bookmark is pointing to. So for example, you might land here. You can simply click on the Polar logo in the top left, and you'll be taken here. Now, by intent, I made the Walrus notification a bit ostentatious. So you got our celebratory Walrus. I've heard those fireworks being called a few things, but we'll say fireworks. Just to direct your eye to the note, it is for BP and Medical Director only. And here you can quickly download the installation tool. I'll go through these steps and I'm going to quickly show you what it looks like. The second step, once you finish downloading that installer, is running the installation file. And then finally, and that should mostly do everything without any intervention, enter your Polar username and login to get into Walrus. So you'll get that last screen there. So I have removed Walrus from this computer, which is my normal Walrus demonstration machine. So I'm going to do a download of the Walrus client. Now, that they say never work with children, animals, and I'm adding in IT systems in a live environment because you'll always be disappointed. But hopefully today, my system will be working as expected. So we've run the installer. We can click on the install button. It will download whatever the most recent version of the files are required to run Walrus. So you're automatically getting the most up-to-date version. And voila. So as simple as that, you now have Walrus installed on that PC for you. So hopefully a nice, simple process. Of course, if you are looking in practice to rolling this out to multiple computers, you don't necessarily need to log into Polar each and every time. You could just transfer that installer file from one machine to other, perhaps put on a USB stick or something to that effect, and actually install it that way. So I'm just going to, oh goodness, I should have memorized this login account, shouldn't I? Bet you there's one too many full stops in there. Nope, that's it. Brilliant. So you can see there, it's feeding Walrus. I have got best practice open here. I probably shouldn't have had a patient open because I could have shown you. All right, yeah, of course it's going to go in, but I kind of wanted to show you what happens when you don't have a patient. Okay, excellent. So it's telling us we've got no patient selected because we have no patient open. We can go in and if I can remember the name of the patient, let's go for Rose. Rose doesn't get much of a look in these days. So best practice will slowly open that up. And we can see there we've now got our Walrus tool connected, running, and picking up those pieces of information for that patient. I'll just close that down. So as you can see, very straightforward. There are some provisos there, but I'll talk about that at the end. But it's a fairly straightforward process. We haven't had too many. So sometimes, obviously different IT setups have different security measures. We haven't had too many that have stopped Walrus from being able to be simply installed. But certainly nice and easy to be able to do that. Next thing I wanted to talk about is, so you've got through here, you've got your Walrus installed. Oh yeah, sorry. So CIS is Clinical Information System. I know there's probably about a dozen different acronyms describing a clinical system, but I mean best practice or medical director not found, i.e. It doesn't seem to be running on that computer directly. So you've got Walrus installed. The next step is to look at the options. So hopefully that is big enough that we can see. So you can see here, when you open it up, you actually have this won't appear until you click on that little cog icon. That will give you access to your options, and that will include the ability to remember your login. Now that is just your username. It will not remember your password necessarily. starting with Windows. So it means that when you actually boot your computer up for the first time of the day, it will automatically start running Walrus as it does so. Screen triggering, I might just show that. So that is the ability to actually have Walrus open a, better make sure it's ticked, it is not, an ability to open the appropriate window within the clinical software that you want to be able to do whatever the activity is. So for example, I've noticed here that Rose is part of the phase 1B group of vaccine rollout for COVID. I have gone, great, no worries, I happen to have one, I'm going to give it to you. I can click on that and then I can do, it takes me straight to immunizations. I can do an ad and then I can put in my COVID vaccination, which I don't know that we've got. Oh, there we go. Comirnaty, there we go. So Rose now has that, that's great. And that's what that screen triggering process is. It's about opening the appropriate window within the clinical system. Always in top, so that will basically give you the ability to make sure that no matter what you're doing, Walrus will continually stay on top of the screen. So you can see now, it doesn't matter what's happening here, it's not disappearing behind any of the windows. It just means that when you're working on your clinical system, you could just sort of have it down here somewhere. It's able to be seen at all times. So you can kind of look down there and go, oh, okay, there's some red notifications. I'll go into what that means in a moment. Red notifications, perhaps there's something there that I might be interested in viewing. If we turn that off, however, you can see now that I'm not taking up any real estate with that tool. It's just hidden in the background, but I'm gonna leave that one on because that makes it a bit easier to demonstrate. Look, the last one is show debug information. That's purely just some tools that help us troubleshoot any issues that you're having. So that's not necessarily a user type option, but I'll point it out because you can see it. It just helps us when we get down to if you're experiencing any issues, we can get some more information about the root cause of that. So looking at the interface itself. So there's a few different items on here. And sorry, I've realized now putting this on screen, it is quite busy, but I'm going to go through them one at a time. So this is in its state where it's fully expanded into a notification. So where, sorry, notification group, I guess. So at the moment we have the MBS eligibility group open. We can see in the title here. Under that, we have some notifications. So this one is pointing at that little sort of yellowy orange box there, which is our, I guess it's urgency or severity indicator. So, green is there's nothing to, everything is fine, nothing to worry about. Yellow is there's some information there you might be interested in. Orange is maybe a little bit more urgent than the yellow, whereas the red is sort of a severe or urgent notification. So, for example, someone with a very high risk of hospitalization will come up as a red, which I'm guessing David in this screenshot has. Probably got that icon in there, which is where that's coming, where that red comes into it. 3 is just looking at the actual title of the notification. And then as we showed before, the screen triggering is number 4 there. Number 5 is probably very important. So that's our patient information. So you might have multiple screens open on your clinical system. Just make sure that in Walrus, because it will basically pick up the active window, I guess, make sure that the patient details in there are matching the expected patient, the patient you want to view. So this is just sort of a clinical safety. You can see your age, date of birth, and name there, just to do a quick comparator against the patient you're expecting to be open. Going down along the bottom here. So these little chevrons, triangles, they're basically indicating to you the highest urgency out of all of the notifications in that notification group. So so this is our, actually I'll go into it in the next screen. This is our clinical risk or risk page. We can see, as I said, there's a red urgent or severe notification there, probably going to be indicating that David has a high risk of hospitalization or something to that effect. So that's indicated as a sort of a reddish there. Going along here, we can see this is our PIP-QI. So got the green there. It's saying basically he doesn't fit into any of the, or so he's not failing, I guess, or not meeting the criteria of any one of the particular PIP-QI measures that are out there. So just a quick indicator of exactly how you're tracking against notifications in that notification group for the patient. We spoke about options, which is fine. So the last one is this little innocuous sort of plus down the side here. It will actually allow you to add or remove groups. So I'm not particularly interested in PIP, and for me, missing data isn't a high priority. I do, however, like the timeline, patient info, and graphs, so I keep those in, as well as obviously my MBS and risks. I can keep just those items in there. So I don't use high risk because of science. So I can see that the patient is in there for just those items. I'll ignore all the other notifications. We are doing a bit of an enhancement in the near future around, we'll be looking at building in roles. So then you'll start being able to do, for an individual user within the practice, are they a GP? Are they a nurse? Are they an admin staff member? Is it a practice manager? You'll be able to go in and set those roles against an individual user, and then define exactly not just which group notification groups come up, but individual notifications to see which things of interest. So I may not be involved in any sort of vaccine rollout, therefore I may wish to have that COVID vaccine hidden, because for me, it's not something that I can do an intervention on. So I'm not interested in it. It just gets in the way of its simple use. Now, I did actually click on the timeline. So that is the patient timeline, which is our summary view of the patient record over time. Well, actually, this is the detailed summary view of the patient over time, and then the summary view, where we can actually see some quick insights around that patient. This one is probably more of a longitudinal view on what has happened to the patient over time. So, what new diagnoses they had, what medications have they gone on, what pathology have they received, any care plans or, valid or relevant MBS items, that sort of thing. In there, you can have a look at a long view for that, probably as I guess, if you're meeting the patient for the first time, being able to see that information would be quite useful. Now, I did say I was quickly going to mention that there was a nuance. So this patient timeline has its own, because it actually lives outside of Walrus. It does have its own, I knew I'd not be able to log into that person. It does have its own, you should just have your things ready, shouldn't you? It does have its own security tick box, I guess, for that particular patient. So, sorry, particular user. I'm going to go into my Walrus machine. Not a group, that's why. There we go. So you'll have to pretend I am on logged in as one of those site users. This is the screen I would be able to see. You'll need to make sure that for someone to actually access that timeline, they need to have this little box ticked, and that will allow them then to actually open that out of Walrus. So it is just a little bit of an extra step, but only for that particular item in Walrus. Actually, I'll re-enable these again, because I'm going to go on to the next slide. So we've gone through the Walrus interface as a whole, just looking at a little bit at the Walrus notification groups. So from left to right, we have our MBS items. So that's your MBS eligibility, looking at care plans and health assessments. I will note this is probably not as useful for mixed billing sites, because we don't have any of your MBS service history. It will basically say everyone is eligible, because we have no record of if you've given someone a health, a health assessment or a care plan, etc., that would make them ineligible right now. We don't have that information, so please do keep that in mind. That won't be as useful for you, but for everyone else, with the release of the fantastic, and Mick, who's in attendance here, was the driver of that one. The new work around tracked MBS, that will be integrated into this as well. So there'll be more information coming through about the MBS eligibility for patients. That one is quite useful. Risk, so this is about clinical information around patient risk classifications or stratification of risk for hospitalization, cardiovascular disease and cirrhosis, I guess. Looking at some screening prompts and other types of clinical notifications. The beauty of the WARIS system is a platform for information delivery. So there's not really too much of, except for the data we have available to us, there's not much of a limit on what information, what relevant or interesting insights we can give you. It's just a matter of building on those, and we can do those centrally. So, once we roll these additional notifications out, they just become available for everyone and all the patients involved of WARIS users. Next one, quite easily, simply the PIP-QI or PIP quality improvement notification. So if there is something, for example, if you have got a type 2 diabetes patient who hasn't had HbA1c in the past 12 months, that will be flagged as All right, I think my headphones just ran out of power. Mick, can you hear me?
I can now. It sounds like you're in a room.
And of course, I won't be able to hear you even if you can hear me, because I don't have any headphones, but that's on with the show. Please tell me if not. Great. Okay, so it's nice to have a little backup there. Okay, so that will actually flag as a missing PIP-QI measure, because of course measure 1 is about diabetes patients. Have they been screened for HbA1c, or say have they had a HbA1c test in that period? Going on, looking at the little clipboard icon here is our missing items. Now this is mostly revolving around our RACGP accreditation type or fifth community fifth standards. So looking at your completeness of the health record, so smoking and alcohol, but of course ethnicity and family history and all of those. So anything that's missing in there will be flagged, that you can then go and actually jump in and add that to the patient's record. Timeline we just saw, look, I have to say, it's very hard to give you a sense of how fantastic that actual platform is with a demo patient. Go in and have a look at someone in your practice that has a complex medical history. You'll be able to see the true value in that, because you can very quickly spot, hey, this person had a fracture, in June 2018. I can see, from there on, this clear process of degradation of their health. So, they had new conditions come on board. Oh, sorry, that's new conditions diagnosed. They've had new medications prescribed. All of a sudden, they're getting more pathology done. They've had these care plans. So you can really see at a single glance exactly what that overall or high level overview of a patient's sort of health tracks over that time period. So I definitely recommend have a look yourself with your own data. Not as interesting with my very limited demo data set for some of these patients. So do have a look if that looked fairly underwhelming. The next one, the little silhouette there of a person, is your patient summary. So if you picture what you get out of a My Health record, it's very basically a summary view of active diagnoses, current medications, and then looking at allergies recorded and the immunizations of the patient. Many of you can get that very quickly out of the clinical system anyway, but it's a little value add from us to be able to throw into there. And then the last bit is graphs. So looking at the graphing of values recorded for systolic blood pressures, BMIs, lipids, creatinines, EGFRs, HbA1cs, microalbumins, peak flow, and then for males, it will also give the option to display PSAs as well. So that'll show you a sort of trend over whatever time period you've got data for, up to a 7-year period. I'm going to allow Mick to pipe up if I'm incorrect about that, but a 7-year period being what we consider, I guess, relevant for a clinical care context. We've got them limited down to that period. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It's very easy. It's 3 simple steps. Get it installed. As long as you have, thank you, Mick, for confirming that. As long as you have a clinical system installed on your actual PC. So I am talking about, I had to log into my virtual machine because I have best practice now. This happens to be best practice server, but best practice client I would have installed at that computer. As long as WARIS is running on the same computer, you'll be able to make use of that tool, and that is a absolute prerequisite, because the ability to figure out what patients open is completely hinged on that link. So that is definitely a hard prerequisite for it. But if you've got that in place, all you have to do is simply download that tool, run the installer, put in your Polar credentials, and off you go. You can have a look at that at any stage. Now, I did mention I wanted to go through a few things that are just additional pieces of information for you. So there's just some nuance around using this tool. Some of these things are just while we're sort of expanding the tool itself. Some are going to be probably a long-term limitation or piece of information you need to keep in mind. So firstly, WARIS data is drawn from the Polar database. Now, this is not, we're not generally just giving you very, basic information back. There's a lot of analysis that goes into a patient record to give you certain notifications. So what that means is that the data for in a patient record has to go through some hoops. So let's take an example of patients marked as missing ethnicity. Now, actually, there's a bit before that. Patient doesn't have an ethnicity recorded in the clinical system. Now, that still has a value attached to it. It's basically a not recorded indicator, like a flag in the clinical system. It gets extracted out by our extraction tool, sent to our databases, where we have our analysis platform run over that and go, okay, for Joe Bloggs, I can see I've got no ethnicity recorded. I will create a WARIS flag for that patient to say that, hey, you should consider looking at recording their ethnicity. Once this has been generated, WARIS will instantaneously be able to pick up that particular item and display it to you. Just keep in mind, sorry, I've got a great question coming through. I will answer in a moment. Once that notification is generated, WARIS will be able to see it straight away. However, when you go and you make a change, so I actually did demonstrate that just then. I added a vaccine for Rose. However, you can see that vaccine still there. That won't be updated for approximately a 24-hour period. So we do a recycle in that sort of regular 24-hour cyclic process. But that's something we're reviewing at the moment. It is just something to keep in mind for now. It's about telling you what's there to do some work on. Just keep in mind, you may not get that instant gratification of seeing a notification disappear for the time being. And again, we're looking at different ways we can approach that. WARIS will not work without the clinical system being open on the same PC. I think I've covered that a few times now. This one is quite important. So in order to fully close WARIS, the little X, actually I can just go in here, this little X here next to the cog, that actually doesn't close WARIS. It minimizes it down to the little notification bar down the bottom here. Actually, probably better if I go in here. So if I close this, you'll see WARIS is still running in the background. I can right click on that, go show, back up it goes, close it back down again. If you truly want to exit out of WARIS, you right click and you hit close, and that is now completely closed. So that isn't not running on that machine anymore. Just keep that in mind, because if you are leaving your computers on, say 24/7, the update process only occurs when you open WARIS for the first time. So if you want it to automatically update when there's a new version available, you will need to close WARIS and then reopen it for that to happen. But in most instances, practices turn off their computers at the end of the day. So you should be hopefully okay with that one. WARIS cannot be installed into a terminal services environment. This is a bit of a pain. It's actually due to the fact that we use a Microsoft built installer platform to do the WARIS installation. And that platform is being picked because it allows us to do installs in places where you would otherwise need administrator access to do installations. It basically becomes a trusted installer for that process. Microsoft themselves being both the developers of terminal services and also the installer platform that we use, unfortunately don't have those two working together. So it is a hard limitation that we have at the moment with the technology we're using. Unfortunately, not something that we can fix on our end, other than redeveloping a new type of installer. Not out of the realms of possibility right now, does not exist. So please do keep that in mind. And then the last one here, I think I've covered off too many times already, only MD and BP at the moment, maybe others, but again, that for now, or at least in the near future, we're looking at just medical director and best practice. Now I did have a question. I cannot see the far left, sorry, the far left pig symbol in the walrus picture. Yep, let me reopen my walrus. I'll go in here, walrus, bring that up. And you see there, I just did a quick check for an update to make sure there wasn't anything there, because I just downloaded this, there was nothing. If you could try clicking on here and just ensure the MBS icon it has a little tick next to it. It's a little piggy bank. I guess that's what the icon is, just so you know. But yeah, if you can click on that little plus icon and tick the box for MBS, you should see it again. Please do let me know if that is not on your machine. I have a question here. How do we create an icon on the desktop to close Walrus? I do not know how to do that. I will ask to see if anyone knows how to do that. There will be a Windows process. I don't know exactly how. I'll get back to you. I'll have your details. I'll get back to you if I can find a way to do that. Are there any other questions? We're at the limit of our time, but very happy to take any last minute questions from anyone. Okay, look, I actually really wanted to cover one very last thing around not actually Walrus, because we're in a fairly constant state of flux at the moment with obviously COVID and vaccinations and all of that. If you have not had a look at it, everyone has access to a COVID report. So a vaccine planning report. Check with your admin person, or if you're not the admin person, or otherwise if you're the admin person, give access to people. But you should have access to this in order to help you find people you can send SMS notification to say, hey, we've got some, Pfizer or AstraZeneca or Moderna shortly in stock. We, would like to offer you an appointment, whatever the case may be. This is your tool, but it's only based on your information. We have no way of connecting to the immunization register, unfortunately, nor the My Health Record directly, unfortunately. But it basically comes down to needing to have your immunization information up to date, even if the patient didn't have the vaccination given at your clinic. So what I wanted to very quickly show you is a little bit of thought went into this to figure out what's the best way for a practice to figure out when the patient's had a COVID vaccine or not. My background is working with My Health Record extensively for quite some time. So my first thought was, hey, let's go there. It gets a feed from the immunization register and gives you an immunization consolidated view. Why don't we go in and we can have a look and see if we can find out when this patient's had their dose. So look, I'm going to just put that out there as an option for practices. If you want to review your patient list, like perhaps, sort of picking up the tail end of your 1B groups, having a look at people with high, God, what was the term? The underlying conditions, I guess. These guys here, you can have a comparison with that just to make sure your data's up to date if they haven't otherwise told you they've had a vaccination given elsewhere. But I just want to put that out there just because it's been something we've had raised a lot of times. And I wanted to see how, if we could help get that information out there. So anyway, look, I'll leave that with everyone. I haven't got any more questions coming through. I will come back about that icon. Otherwise, thank you all for attending. I apologize for going over time. I hope everyone stays safe out there, and we'll see you again in another month. Thanks, everybody.